I mean, you are the queen of authenticity, Molly. It is such an honor to have you here after we had such a small interaction. I mean, so many years ago. Oh God, that trip. That trip really changed my life. When the trip to Ibiza, I'm referring to, I've talked about it a lot of times, but that was where I met you.
Mhm.
And you had such a lasting impact on me with your confidence and just your ability to you were just such a boss. Like there was just something about you. And I remember Noah saying, and at that time we weren't even dating, we were all just friends, but he was like, Molly's the biggest boss here. He's like, she's the biggest G. Like she's like, she bought her own first class ticket. And I just remember that moment and being like, yeah, she exudes this energy. But your story is so riveting, as Aaron Sorkin so perfectly said. And the way that you've reinvented yourself, I know is going to continue to give so many people hope and knowing that they can turn it the hell around.
Thank you. And I think it's so funny because we had these parallel lives, but I just always remember how much you stood out in a crowd as just because it was dark,
And late.
No, it was dark and it was late and you would just have this glow about you. And it was funny, you were just one of those people that I really remembered. And what's funny about that Ibiza trip is I remember that was towards the end where the walls were just so closing in on me. And by the end of that trip, I just remember sitting in a corner. Everyone's having so much fun. And I'm sitting in a corner and I'm just like, I have to get out of this life. I have to. I have nothing left inside. And I was just so stressed. But, we put it on.
Mm-hmm.
But you've just always had the best energy. And then, just to see what you've done and where you came from. And it's like we started at the same place.
Yes.
But we both, I think, in order to be in that place, we're suppressing really important parts of ourselves, and maybe that's what I recognized.
I mean, you definitely did.
Yeah.
Because I most definitely was.
Same.
And it was actually that trip that I started to really love myself. And it sounds crazy, but I just left feeling like I know who I'm becoming, and I like who I'm becoming. And I want to continue to just feel this embrace and nourish it, because I felt it just opening things up.
Interesting.
For me. And I mean, I went to Ibiza, my boyfriend at the time had just broken up with me and said, have fun being a prop on that trip. And I was like, I really liked it. I was so broken. I was telling Noah about I was devastated, and it shattered me in a sense. And then I left that feeling no one and nothing is going to define me. But me. And being who I really am. And there was something about that trip that I started to see my own light.
And something about someone saying, you have the voices in your head that sometimes aren't so kind. But when someone says something like that to you, when someone has ever said something like that to me, it has the opposite effect on me. It doesn't knock me down. It's it brings out this fighter and this absolute determination to never let anyone sort of speak to me and let that be true. It's you learn how to use it. And that's why sometimes I am just give me the bad stuff, because that brings up the warrior, but not too much of it because, I'm human, but
Right.
those are the best, I think, those were the things that hurt me the most drove me the most.
I mean, it shows. Like, I sit back and I think we'll dive so deep into your story because it's just like, it's mind blowing, honestly. But you are the definition of a fighter. And I think that, I mean, that is why I was like, I wanted you here so badly because we've all been knocked down and continually knocked down.
Mhm.
But like, you didn't just like get up, you busted the fucking doors down. And I'm like, how in the hell did you do that coming from such a low
Mm.
and not allowing that to define you? Like, how do you do that?
I mean, I think that it starts with a choice. So to understand somebody, I think you have to understand their history to a degree. And I grew up with this very charismatic father who loved talent and loved winning and loved success. And whether he meant to or not, that was the definition of how you felt loved and safe in my family. And my brothers were prodigies. Jeremy was number one in the world at 16 years old in Olympic skiing. He went on to win 3 world championships. He competed in 2 Olympics. One of them, he was a teenager. He went on to play in the NFL. He was an Abercrombie model. And if you're like wondering, thinking like this kid must be an asshole. No, he started this charity for senior citizens in our town at 21 because he felt like we didn't have the proper reverence for the elder generation. And so, this is Jeremy, young prodigy. Jordan was just an absolute genius, went on to become a Harvard-educated cardiothoracic surgeon. And I tried, I had this like crazy back surgery in which they fused basically my entire spine together, rendering it immovable. And everyone was like, okay, so you're done skiing. And I felt like in their minds, they're like, Jeremy's the skier anyway. But I got back on and I made the US ski team. And I've just been a fighter. And then, I have a different mind than my brother. It's hard for me to focus on things sometimes. And so in high school, I didn't really do that well. And I was like very shamed for it. And then in college, I figured it out. I was like, oh, okay, so my focus is shorter. So I'm going to total up the number of pages that I need to read on this syllabus for the entire semester, divided by days in the semester. And then I can take it in small bites and make little quizzes for myself. So like I got strategic about it. And then I did really well in school, but like I wasn't going to Harvard, And so I just had this existential ache and this incredible drive to have a seat at that table. And, I made the US ski team and I became nationally ranked and then I fell and retired and went back to the University of Colorado, where the next step was to go to law school. And I was just like, I don't know if I can do this right now. Like my heart is broken. I don't know who I am. And I don't know if this works anymore because inputs aren't equaling outputs. And and I was just like, maybe this life isn't for me. Maybe I just let my brothers have success. And, I was just so lost. And so I came to LA and I started working for these crazy guys who, and they had this poker game. And that first night, I didn't know what I was doing. I showed up in this silly little dress with like a cheese plate. And I always talk about this, but my boss was like, you need to like help me run this poker game. Don't mess up. So I was like Googling like, what kind of music do poker players like to listen to? What do they eat? And I made, a playlist with The Gambler on it. I was young. I was from a small town. I didn't know what I was doing. And it was mortifying because then all these famous people started walking in and politicians and CEOs and billionaires. But as the night wore on, I was like, okay, if I can just get outside of myself right now and my embarrassment, what an opportunity here. Like, this is access at a very young age to inside information and capital and power. And I guess I was also primed for a rebellion because I had tried it the conventional way. I had given everything I had into the conventional way. You know, sometimes I was in so much pain after skiing, like I had to crawl around, like, but nobody recognized that because my brother was a prodigy. And I was just like, maybe this is something worth checking out. Cut to. But I think I wasn't going to stop until I reached some sort of pinnacle of what I considered or thought would be greatness. And, so then poker became the thing. And I started my own game, which was essentially kind of crazy because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was managing so much money and managing, the things that would happen on those nights, which were crazy and dangerous. And what presented to me is that I was an entrepreneur. Like that was where I was really good. I was very good at with people.
Mm-hmm.
I authentically, like when I meet someone, I authentically am so curious about them, and my brain just naturally wants to find the interesting or unique part of them, and I'm not. And then I became unafraid to talk about it. And so I was great with people. I started to be very good with strategy and problem solving and thinking on my feet. And all of a sudden, like I had these games and I was making millions of dollars and I was running, like eventually running the biggest poker games in the world and acting as the bank for them, like settling the night. And these are games where people would lose up to $100 million in a night. And I learned so much. And in the beginning, it was so fun. I like bought a Bentley with all cash and was, would like have $1 million in cash in my apartment. And I brought all my friends along, like I had them do odd jobs at the games. And I just felt it was like a dream. And then it started to get dark. And I think what happened was for most of the LA game, I really cared about the outcome. I never wanted to put someone in a seat who could lose everything for my own game. Like my success was commingled with the success and the well-being of others. It was a kind of a do no harm philosophy. So I'm running these games, I'm making all this money. I am learning to be an entrepreneur. I'm learning about finance and the art world. And I'm able to have like games with art dealers and artists if I want. Like it's this Trojan horse that allows me to sort of infiltrate any part of society. And it was just like, and I made it like I realized it was so much more than a poker game. If you did it right, it was a community and it was mythology and it was this secret, clandestine, like exciting world. And I was very meticulous about the books and, I was learning how to be a businesswoman. And then one of the really famous players who, we've all seen in movies and who was really an ally to me for so long, became more and more sort of pathologically obsessed with winning. And he was the biggest winner in the game. And he would call me and want me to invite certain people and not invite certain people to give him edge. And I started standing up to him and saying, now that this is my game, like I have to run this with full objectivity and fairness. And so it was a slow evolution of he realized that I wasn't going to do his bidding. And then one day he pulled me aside and he said, "You make too much money." And I remember, and there were things that led up to that, attempts at humiliation, stuff like that. And by this time, I'd traveled the world to recruit for this game. I had 20 people that worked for me. I was running all the books. I was managing the room and the employees, and I was, sort of financing a large part of the game. I had incorporated, like it was my business. It had gone from this little game in the basement of a rock and roll club to kind of an institution in Los Angeles. And he said, "You make too much money. You're taking too much money off the table. That's money that should probably be going in my pocket." And he said, "If you want to keep the game, you can work for me, and I'll decide your salary." And I remember going home that night and knowing without question that he was more powerful than I was, that he had no problem being evil and playing dirty, and that I was at a deficit. But the question before me is, do you take this deal, keep this game, but lose your dignity, your sovereignty? And as much as I loved that game more than anything in my life at that point, sadly, more than a lot of the people in my life, because this had been a conduit to the sort of like the hole inside of like, what am I going to do that's significant, right? So it was so much more than a game. And ultimately, I said, no, I'm not going to take that deal. And he called me the next week excitedly and said, "Don't bother calling the players. I took the game and you're done." And I was terrified because I didn't want to go back. See, that's the thing that I don't think I realized, right? Is that I didn't just, and I think this is what happens to a lot of people when they get successful. They think, "Oh, well, somehow I got lucky. And if this is gone, then I have to go back to that life where I'm picking up dry cleaning for someone, or no, you are here because you got yourself there." But I didn't realize that at the time. Plus, I really needed to prove to myself more than anything that somebody couldn't just do that to you, right? And so I was like, I'm going to build the biggest poker game in the world. I'm going to do it in New York City. I don't care that I don't know anyone in New York City. I don't care that it's 2008 and the economy has been brought to its knees and Wall Streeters are my sort of assets. Like, I'm going to do this. And so I came here and I met with a million poker players and I kept asking them, what's the problem with the current system? Because it was the same kind of scary game runners that were running the games for like 20 years. And they would tell me about being treated unfairly. And the way that I really ran my games and what I really focused on was treating people fairly, taking care of people, making them feel safe, making them feel seen and heard, not just the celebrities, everyone, really just understanding what it means to have effective presence, which is, it's the science of how you make people feel. Really understanding that if you can, not in a manipulative way, but in an authentic way, really get someone's trust and make them believe that you care about them and that they are worthy, then, they're going to want to do business with you. They're going to want to be friends with you. Like it's it's much more simple than I think a lot of people realize.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
But I think people are so strategic.
They are. And they lose the authenticity, which means they lose the connection. And that is a big missed opportunity. Anyway, so I started talking to all these players and I found out that these games were sort of unfair and they weren't glamorous and they were letting pros play. And a lot of times people wouldn't get paid. And so I was like, okay, I'll be the bank. I will guarantee the games. And then I just started like hiring socialites to recruit for me, casino hosts, like anyone that was in New York City that knew people. And somehow, by the end of that year, I had kind of taken over and then built the biggest private poker game in the country at the time. And this was the game that someone would eventually lose $100 million in, which is, now sitting here with you is so crazy, so dysfunctional. But to me, in the warped world that I was in, it was a triumph and it made a lot of noise. And it showed me that it confirmed for me something I really needed to believe in. And that is that, the unfair but more powerful person doesn't get to win all the time, doesn't get to dictate your life. And I'd been fighting that fight since I was a little kid in my family, because my dad, and I love him. He's done more work than anyone I've ever seen, but he ran our family like a dictator.
Right.
And I was 100% of the time, like, activist freedom fighter. And so it was a tumultuous childhood. And so then, I start running the big games and the little games, and New York is crazy and I'm making more money, but it's scary. And then, I had the run-in with the mobster and who literally came to my apartment and put a gun in my mouth and, said, "You're going to give us a piece of your game or we're going to find your family in Colorado." Like telling me this while I have this like huge gun in my mouth, and I'm so sure, my teeth are chattering and I'm just so sure it's going to go off. And then, he really beat me up and then he took everything from my safe, including I had a lot of cash, but including photographs and things that my grandmother had left me. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't call the cops. I couldn't call my parents. And I think that was the moment where I knew this thing had crossed over to a place that was very different than where I'd started. But I slowly, I guess, it happens in inches, where I had started to make this decision that was a little left of my heart, and then this decision, just small, and then it becomes bigger and they compound. And then all of a sudden, I remember looking in the mirror during that time and, my face looked good. I didn't even know who I was. I didn't even know who I was. I couldn't have told you my favorite color. I was a person that had become a chameleon for the love of money and power. And I had lost myself. And then I got this crazy thing that happened. I got the New York Times, and on the cover it said 125 arrested in the biggest mob-related takedown in New York City history. I never heard from them again. But then there was a couple other, there was a guy running a Ponzi scheme and then some Russian guys running an insurance fraud scheme. And the feds were, had thrown a confidential informant in. And then I started to do something that my attorneys told me not to do, to stay within the confines of not violating the federal statute, which was they said, don't take a rake. Don't take a percentage of each pot. Let it be based on tips. And it was based on tips. But remember, I'm in charge of who gets these 9 coveted seats. And I'm also extending credit. So I'm loaning people. So when they won, they would tip me really well. So I was making a lot of millions of dollars every year. And I was getting sloppy. And like I said, I started to care less for people. And I started to let people play who maybe they had the money, maybe not. And started to realize that I was just really feeding into addiction and vice. And knowing that, I just kept doing it. And that really impacted my self-esteem and what I thought of myself. And then it becomes kind of easy to just self-destruct, to drink more, to take pills, and to start to take a rake to cover your own butt, And the feds, the confidential informant saw that. I got a text message from one of my employees at one of my games, and they said, the FBI is here looking for you. Don't come here. And I knew it was game over. And I just wanted to go home, even though my relationship with my parents was very fraught and very, sort of, there was a lot of distance between us, but I just wanted to be home with them. And I remember trying to buy a plane ticket to Denver and logging into my account and seeing that my account balance was negative $9,999,099. And I made it home, and the feds said, we've seized your assets because we believe you're making your money illegally. You don't need to come in right now. There's no investigation against you. But if you want your money back, you could come in and go on record and tell us about how you're making it. And we can, which is essentially a confession. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't do that anymore. And so I moved in with my mom and my grandmother.
How old were you?
I was 33. And I was devastated. And it was all gone. Most of the friends, all of the money. And I was embarrassed. It was in the tabloids. Mm-hmm. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. And I had no idea I didn't even have a bank account, let alone any money. Nobody wanted to take my phone call. And so I had to do some work, like the inner work, Mm-hmm. The first thing I did is I went to rehab.
You did?
I did. I went to rehab. I think this was the first time I went to rehab, and I think I did it in a way to show my parents and the people around me that I was serious about changing, but I don't think I did it in a way to really look at how I was using substances. But I was sober for a while. And in sobriety, I went through the 12 steps. And the 12 steps led me to 2 incredibly important things during that time. More than 2. Making amends is huge. All these things are huge. But the first was that I had to own this, that this was entirely my fault. Mm. I had near perfect information on the laws. I had all the opportunities in the world. I had found a way to make a lot of money. And people had been loyal to me. And I was the one that made that choice. And owning that and taking responsibility for that at first feels like swallowing a rock. And then it feels like so powerful, because you realize that if I own My whole life, all of it, everything that's ever happened to me. If I look at my part in it, even if I had, nothing to do with the earlier traumas or whatever, you're a kid, whatever. But my part in that was you're still holding on to it. You're still letting it identify you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can learn to let those things go, because you have too much damn pride to let those people or those things have that power over you anymore, Like I had to get angry sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I had to go into the shadows and look at the things that I did, the parts of myself that I didn't want to look at. And I did it with an amazing woman who is like this Puerto Rican woman from the Bronx. And she's like half Tony Montana, half Mother Teresa. And she's this perfect combination of not going to let you off the truth, but going to love you so hard through it.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. That's when I started meditating, which changed my life in a huge way. And in this weird way, I started to be really happy, And then I got this little job, and this was 2 years since I'd run a game. I got this little job in LA at this production company, and I moved into this little apartment, and it felt like a fresh start. It really did. And then 5 days later, in the middle of the night, I got arrested by 17 FBI agents with machine guns and high beam flashlights. And they put me in handcuffs. And they put this piece of paper in front of me that said the United States of America versus Molly Bloom. And then they took me to jail. And I remember sitting in the jail cell, and they were like, I was like, how long am I going to be here? No one gives you any answers, And then seeing some of the people I know like paraded past me and into the other cells. And I'm just like, I haven't run a game in 2 years. Like, what is this, And I had a day and a half to get to New York City to find an attorney who's going to represent me in this very serious indictment. The press release said I was looking at like 60 years. And I don't have $1. And my mom had just put her house up to bail me out, and my father and I aren't speaking. And so I had 8 meetings that day, and my 7 out of the 8 attorneys were like, it's going to be $250,000 to even look at this, And I said, I don't have any money, but I promise you can ask around about me. Like, I will find a way to pay you. And they were like, no. And then I met Jim Walden, and he was at Gibson Dunn, which is this very prestigious defense firm. And Jim had been a former federal prosecutor who had gone after the 5 crime families. He believes heartily in justice. He's so noble. And he looked at the indictment and he said, I would have never brought this indictment. This is for, unless there's something I don't know here, this is for Flash, And he said, I'm going to help you.
Wow.
And I started working with Jim. And Jim said, and I walked into his office after the arraignment, which was terrifying. Like, it was me and 33 like male criminals, some of them not serious, but a lot of them extremely serious Russian mobsters who I'd never met in my whole life. And they didn't know me, and they didn't know what I knew or what I didn't know,
Right.
And I remember working with Jim, and the first thing I said to him was, okay, what's our strategy and what's our angle going to be? And he said, integrity. And I just remember standing in his office, and I was like, it just hit me in the gut because, man, that is who I wanted to be,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be like a civil rights lawyer or an international like human rights lawyer. And I wanted to be Jim Walden. And here I was under federal indictment publicly, like, and I just remember saying to myself in that room on that day, no matter what, I will never abandon myself again. No matter what what is on the other side of it, I will never not do something that doesn't feel in alignment with my heart and who I am and who my parents raised me to be, And it was funny because the next day we got a call from one of the prosecutors in the Southern District, and they wanted a meeting. And we walked in there and they were very excited to meet me, especially the lead prosecutor. And he said, we're really excited to meet you. And ultimately what they wanted me to become a confidential informant. And they didn't care about the guy that beat me up, the crime families. They didn't care about the guy that was running the Ponzi scheme or the guys that were running the insurance fraud scam. They didn't care about that. They wanted inside information on the politicians, the celebrities, and the billionaires. And if I was willing to do that, they would give me all my money back, and they would give me a deferred prosecution, which was going to keep me out of prison. And I had 48 hours to make that decision. And I got to the same place. This was my fault. I made these choices. These people that they want me to drag their life through the mud. And when you sit on the other side of the United States government and you understand their unchecked, like unlimited power and resources, it's crazy. And here I was, like, I ran a poker game, right?
It makes you feel so powerless,
Yeah,
right? And
right.
you're like, this is what I did.
Yeah, right. I paid my taxes the whole time.
Right.
Anyway, so I got to this place where I said, if I have to go to jail, I'll go to jail. If I have to lose all my money, I'll make more money. But I have to do what feels right in my heart. And that is to stand for the consequences of my actions and not drag other people, a lot of them who I knew their children, through this process. And so that's what I did. And then it was a year to be sentenced. I had to wait a year to be sentenced. And my dad and I weren't speaking. And I remember he called me a couple of weeks before sentencing because we all thought I was going to prison. And he said, "You are my only daughter and my firstborn, and you're probably going to go to prison, and we're going to work this out." And so he came in the movie. Jessica's having a mental breakdown on the roller skating rink, but in real life, it was, just he and I for about 2 days talking. And I finally got up the courage to ask him the question that had haunted me my whole life. Because I have these really high achieving brothers, and they saw what I got from fighting as hard as I fought. And that was punishment after punishment. So they got smart, They were like, they just did what they were told. And I believed that my dad loved them more than he loved me because they were boys and because they were better at things. That was, if you want to strip it down to its most raw form, that's what I believed.
Right. And
that's what I carried around. And that's so much of what drove me to do the things that I did, ambitious and otherwise. And so, but I was always so afraid to ask him the question because my fear was he would lie to me and say that he didn't, but I would see it in his eyes, or he would tell me the truth that he did, you know. But I just got really like real with him, and I said, why do you love my brothers more than you love me? You know, I don't think that's what parents are supposed to do. And he was like, listen, there have been times where I've liked them more, which was valid. But I love you every bit as much as I love them. And he said, I don't know if I did it right, but I believe that the world is a hard place. And I think it's harder for women. And I wanted to make you tough. And he said, I think I took it too far and I think I did it in the wrong way. But I want you to know that that was my intention. And it was this very emotional moment, and we were both crying. And, you know, from that moment, we were able to build on a real foundation. And I think that was the first time I was like really vulnerable and saw what comes from being really vulnerable. Now it could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
But at least I would have had my answer. But now I have my dad, you know? And
I need tissues. Oh my God. That's so beautiful.
I love you.
I'm sorry. I had no idea that I was going to cry.
Oh.
And that's just the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. And those are some of the hardest questions to ask, you know, but it's better to know. And it just might be the biggest gift, one of the biggest gifts of your life, you know?
You crack each other open.
Right.
Right? It's
Right.
like I'm sure, helped you see him in a light that he had never allowed himself to be seen, to break down the walls.
Right.
And that's when you let people in.
Yeah. And that's when you start to also stop deciding people are either good or bad.
Ooh.
You know, and you understand that humans are designed with a lot of flaws, and to start to just normalize that, you know, and not write people off because they did this one thing that
Yeah.
And most of the time I've found when people are exhibiting atrocious behavior, it's because they have unmet needs or because they have pain, and, you know, and there's been times where I've kind of gotten down in the mud, as my friend Simon says, with them, and had those conversations and gotten to understand why they act that way. And anyway, so you know, I I go to sentencing. My whole family's there, and I get a judge who is young, 41 years old, Obama appointed. Super disappointed with my life choices.
Yeah.
But he said, I'm very moved by the people that have shown up for you today. I'm very moved by the character letters. I'm moved by your prior life. You know, I mean, I had letters from coaches and professors, and he said, and I'm moved by Jim Walden's representation of you. And, you know, I see that you went to rehab and you did community service. And so he said, I'm not going to put you in jail. Which was, man, I lost my knees, you know?
Yes.
I mean,
I need a sip.
yeah. I need a drink.
Did you feel that you were going?
I did.
You thought you were going?
Yep. Yeah, and I had that conversation with Jim, and I was like, whatever, like, I'll just learn a new language and mentor some women. He's like, Molly, women's federal prison is not like men's federal prison. The guards are men. You know, they rape the inmates. Like, the women are not generally like white collar criminals. Like, it's a dangerous place. You do not be blasé about this. But, you know, I tried to like be very strong and very, but when he said that, man, I lost my knees. Like,
I'm sure your parents did.
Yeah.
Your family.
Yeah. And I remember being so happy, right? But then sitting at dinner that night with my family, and Jordan had just graduated Harvard for like the 90th time. And Jeremy had just been like inducted into the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. And I'm like, here I am, the family felon. Damn it. You know?
But
And
you
I'm
didn't
like,
go to prison.
Yeah, but I didn't go to prison, but I'm still like 35 years old, millions of dollars in debt, a convicted felon and a social pariah.
You owed all that money.
I owed millions of dollars. And they were going to come for it. So, and I was living with my mom, and I remember going home and walking the mountains, meditating, and just saying like, there's a solution here. I don't know what it is, but there's a solution here. And then I just started thinking about the story, and I said, this is a unique story, and our stories are so important. And I'll write a book. So I wrote a book proposal, and I took it to all the publishers, and I got all these like exciting meetings with all these like top editors, and they all wanted this celebrity takedown piece. And I said, if people have talked about being in these games, I will mention their names. That's why I mention some and don't mention others. I will not tell a story that ruins anyone's lives. And I don't think the real story is celebrity gossip. And so I got turned down over and over and over. And finally I got a small book deal. But it was a book deal. And I thought like, I'm going to write my book and it's going to change my life, And so I published the book, and I think like 20 people bought it, like probably most of them were related to me. And I was like, okay, well, still my only idea is the story. And so I just got really clear and really strategic. And I was like, I made this short list of the most prolific filmmakers in Hollywood. Shonda Rhimes, Catherine Bigelow, Sorkin, Spielberg. And I was like, I looked at the list, and I said, I think Sorkin's the one. And at the time, he was the highest paid screenwriter in Hollywood. He might still be. And he wrote A Few Good Men in The Social Network. And I just felt like he would see the version of this story that other people wouldn't. And I also felt like he was brave. And he needed to be, because there were so many powerful people that were trying to shut this down.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept trying to get a meeting with Aaron, and people would like laugh me out of their office. Aaron's not going to write the movie about the poker princess, But there's something so powerful about losing everything and becoming fearless.
Mm-hmm.
Your like ego is checked at the door. You're just fearless. And it's important to remember that sort of like vibe and that energy when you do put it back together, because it's so powerful. And you don't want to go back to that place where your ego is fragile and, and you have fears and whatever, or you let your fears
take over.
Right. And I got that meeting with Aaron, Ken Hertz, who's another person that just sort of descended into my life in like guardian angel style. He's a entertainment attorney in LA, and he has a lot of connections. And he's like, I'll send Aaron the book. And I remember going to meet with Aaron, and I had this moment like right before I walked in. What am I doing? Like he writes like movies about Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs. Like, what am I doing? And then I just remembered, like I remembered a couple things. I remembered watching so many people play poker, which is in so many ways such a great metaphor for life. And so many people, when they would get a bad beat, they would go back into this little shell, and they would be unwilling to take risks again. They would be unwilling to get bold and take risks again, even when there was opportunities on the table. And I kept books on everyone. And over time, those people lost big, and I think over time in life, that's how you lose too, right? And then I also thought, no, I have taken responsibility for all of this. I've protected people. I have, not taken any of the easy way outs. And I'm going to have this meeting. And I went in and told
Did you
him my story.
meditate?
Oh, yeah. Like the whole plane ride, like breath work, meditate.
Yes.
Like I was probably like too zen, But I remember, I always talk about this in every speech because I just think it's so funny. And Aaron is just such a funny person. But I remember telling him my story and he was just like stone face, like giving me nothing, poker face. And when I was done, he was like, well, I'll tell you one thing, kid. I've never met someone so down on their luck and so full of themselves.
The confidence.
Yeah.
You just have that thing.
Or I can just fake
or
it.
you can just bring it.
Yeah, because but that's how you become confident to some degree is you
Own.
act it.
And you own.
Yeah.
You own all of this.
Yeah.
Which makes you embody something different.
One of the most powerful I've ever felt in my whole life was that day with those prosecutors, with all their power behind them and all their resources and all their leverage, and be able to look at them and say, you know what? I don't think so. I lost a lot of money that day. I potentially could have lost my freedom, but that's what they talk about when they say you can't control what people, or you can't control all the time what happens to you, but you can control your reaction.
Mm.
And in being able to do that, nobody can take your power.
No one.
No one can take your sovereignty.
I do.
And so, Aaron wrote the movie. He made his directorial debut, did really well. It gave me a second chance. And then, I met Devin, who is the father of my child. And we got married, which is not something I thought I would do.
I remember. I cried. I was like, I'm so happy to see you with your person and not even being that close, but just like, I just felt such a way for you.
Yeah. Well, he is my person in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I had frozen my eggs at 36. And the place I did it was like, you're good. You should be fine, which is what a lot of fertility clinics tell people. Not so much anymore, but because now they have to be responsible for their results. But I think it's a technology that's been massively oversold. And I didn't even think for 1 second that we would have an issue. At 41, we fertilized the frozen eggs and none of them worked.
Mm.
So I was 41 and the doctors were like, they tested my fertility markers, the AMH and the follicle count. And I had a doctor at the time give me about a 3% chance. And so I did 9 rounds of IVF.
I remember.
Yeah. And then I got pregnant, which was amazing. But during this, I'd say the last 6 months, I had started to question whether Devin was the one.
Yeah.
And 2 months pregnant, it was really clear to me that he wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I knew that just waiting wasn't the right thing to do. That we needed to figure this out now so that Fiona would have this already sort of this structure that existed for her. And we would do all of our, fighting and negotiating and everything. And it turned out to be this beautiful conversation between he and I, where it was like, we love each other so much, but it's not like that.
Yeah.
And we both cried and like grieved and like hung out for 48 hours because and I moved back to Colorado and he was finishing his PhD. And so I was kind of like pregnant and going through a separation and really terrified that the pregnancy wasn't going to work because of all the stuff. And
I prayed so hard. I really did.
It worked.
I knew you were going to have a baby.
That's what it's like you and Allie both said that.
I knew it.
I know. I love that you knew that.
I did.
And she was born and I just saw like Devin become a different person. Like he just broke open. And he was finishing his PhD in North Carolina. So, for the first year and a half of Fiona's life, I was, not only the responsible for her financial care, but, for her care. And we made sure that Devin flew out every month so that he could, because I want him to have this relationship with her. But it was really, really hard. Mm-hmm. And it is really, really hard. And I have gotten to this place, like I just kept, I started working again when she was 3 weeks old and leaving this child who I still at that, like, didn't believe was going to survive, because you have so much heartbreak in IVF and having to leave her and get on a plane so that I could support her. And then, I was dead set on breastfeeding her for a year. So I'd be like pumping, I'd like go to Australia for a day, like drop off milk, like go. I mean, it was a nutty first year and a half. And I now am like trying to figure out how to work and not miss out on this.
Yeah.
And I'm also so tired. I've never cried on a podcast.
Can't say the same. I cry. No, I know. I know in my way.
I know.
It's so hard.
It's so
and you can't do it all. I think that's one of the biggest self-discoveries of really powerful powerhouse women and people. It's like we think we can take on every damn thing and we can do it until we can't.
Yeah.
And that's good to know that.
I just like I can get my mind there, because of how much we meditate and how much we love. But my body is just, it's not cooperating,
Yeah.
And I don't want to miss her life,
I do.
And I don't want her to have to at 2 years old just be on these like 7-hour, 8-hour travel days,
right.
So, this is what I know when, they call it in the program, the gift of desperation. And it happens in different ways, but it's very clear to me that something needs to change. And it's always been very clear to me that my life won't feel complete if I don't do something at scale to empower young women and women.
Yeah.
And so it's forcing me into this place that I really want to be, which is to start building a program, communities, mentorship, and eventually leadership academies for young girls.
Ooh. Yes.
Because not in a down with the patriarchy way at all, but we should have more women in high leadership positions because we live in this world too, right?
Yes.
I don't think it needs to be all women. I don't think it, you know what I mean? But like, I believe that from the smallest sort of iteration of it, I believe that in similar ways that you do, that I've been on both sides of having power and agency, and that the other side is a life that is so much more extraordinary. So I really want to teach power and I don't care if that power that someone learns is because they want to be the best mom and like find the best partner, or if they want to be president of the United States. Like it all comes from the same place. I'm just tired of seeing women not be able to live the life that they're meant to live because of sort of lack of tools or lack of community or lack of mentorship.
You're right.
And so I'm launching a podcast and then also eventually a mentorship program.
Molly's masterclass came to my mind. It dropped right in.
I love that. I want to call it a smart girl's guide to everything, because it's like applying high level strategy to this plight of being a girl or a woman in today's world, and the ways that like you can empower yourself, you know? And I think I pull so much from how AA is structured. It's, you know, sort of like this education, and then it's a community, and then it's mentorship. And then after you get mentored, you turn around and, you know, you mentor someone. And I just think that the women's movement and women in general can become so divisive and competitive.
Oh, the most.
But when you find a community of women who believe in you or who, you know, mentor, it's life-changing.
Life-changing.
So I think the universe is just moving me to that place. But first, I need to get well again, if that makes sense.
It does.
I think this idea that we do a little work and we fix ourselves, and then we go, and then everything's fine forever and ever and ever. You know, like I'm in another place where I need to do more work and figure more things out, and, you know, take a look at the decisions that I'm making. Like, what am I choosing? Can I scale down the way that I'm living and work less and be there for my daughter?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, it's those truths that I have to look at, you know? Why haven't I started it yet? Like, am I scared?
Yeah.
That it's not going to compare to Molly's game? Hell yeah. You know? But it's like, you know, like then you go back and you tap into that F it, right? Like, it really is you and your, whatever your spiritual sort of connection is.
Call it in.
Yeah. And if it fails, that's fine. I love a good comeback. You know?
And that you've had a few. If there is anyone here to just, say to you and to empower you to like, look at what you've done. Look how many times you have continued to step into this truth of who you are and to look yourself dead in the mirror and to be so honest with yourself and with mistakes that you've made and to be able to continue moving forward. And even, there was a part of me that when you were like, well, he was my person. And I was like, I kicked myself and I'm like, no, this is all a part of it. Like, you can find your person. You can understand that's not your person. It helped you birth your person.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have the ability for us all to recognize this incredible strength inside of ourselves that we all need to see. And it's really hard to see when you're dealing with life and all the things that we're up against. But you have paved the way. You continue to pave the way from listening, from no longer reacting, but responding and really letting it land and to see what it is and to no longer continue what you don't want. So take this. I hope you never cried on a podcast before. I hope you take this moment to know that this is the moment of change.
Yeah.
And you get to change it.
Yeah.
You know that. No one can do this but you and the support of who's guiding the way.
And it feels very right that it's on your podcast, because I can't tell you how many times I have tuned in, even if I couldn't finish the workout, even if I couldn't finish the meditation, just to hear the strength and the reminder and the love and the truth of your message. I mean, you were like one of my good friends during pregnancy.
When you would post me, I'd be like, I can't, but I remember I'm like, I can't believe you do my workouts, because I admire you so much.
Well, Melissa, I admire you so much and what you are doing in the world. I feel like you were kind of one of the first women who is in that sort of space of fitness and everything, to totally stress making sure the mind's healthy and meditation. And I was like, this is, and I'm sure sometimes that was hard because meditation's not that popular.
People skip over it.
Right. But you're so consistent with it. And I think that you've changed a lot of people's lives. You've certainly changed mine, because your message is simple, it's pure, and it's profound. And I just when you speak on your videos or whatever, you really feel the love and the intention, deep calling you have to want people to get well, to want people to get powerful. And you have been a big part of my journey. Big. And so to sort of have this moment here feels really powerful. And it feels really right.
Thank you.
From club rats to prophets.
Listen, you can literally do anything that you truly and intentionally put your mind to. And I think the biggest word that stands out for me is maintaining a sense of integrity through it all because people have lost it.
Yeah. Yep.
I have dissolved relationships in my life. And I think you said something so beautifully that we all fuck up, right? But when someone repeatedly does and they have not, they haven't adapted the tools or to at least see the shit that they do. I am sorry. Go do your work. I'm here. I actually, no disrespect, wish you the best, but like you got to go do that on your own.
Yeah.
And then come back around when you know.
Because the question is, do they wish you the best?
No.
Right.
They don't.
So to keep someone like that in your life is codependent. It's healthy. It's people pleasing. It's all the stuff that, and we don't have time for that.
None.
Kids,
0.
jobs.
Please save it. Don't send the, don't. Stop everyone with the bullshit.
Yeah.
So over it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, can we just be real? And if you can't, take a course, take police, I don't know, like something. But
yeah, they're on a journey.
They're on a journey and we all are.
And I always see the good in people. I always want to see the good in people. Even, some of the people that would like cheat in my poker game. I'm like, but tell me about your childhood.
I'm the same.
But at some point, it's like it's their own journey. You can't save them. I have this conversation with Allie all the time, my best friend Allie.
Love her.
Because she is like, she wants to save everyone all the time. And then there are people that she has invested so much time and so much love into that screw her over.
It's not reciprocated.
No, because they can't. It's not that they're just there for the more.
Of course. Yeah. So once you identify that, I think we could literally have a whole other podcast on that. Pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be cold or mean or this mean girl shit. Like enough of that. It's with love and letting go.
And like, please, I hope you figure it out. Truly.
Please, God, we all do it. Do it for you. And for the people around you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one last thing to ask you.
Okay.
This was I'm just so taken by you, first of all. And I think this is the least I've spoken. And I'm so happy and proud of myself because all I wanted to do was listen to you. And everything you said needs to be heard. So thank you for opening your heart. And I would love to just end with what it means to you that you do this so beautifully. But what does it mean to you to move with your heart?
First of all, I love that that's the title. I was like, when you were talking about your podcast, I'm like, what is she going to name it? It's going to be so good. So for many, many years, to avoid being hurt, I armored up and I moved with my mind. Strategically, at times manipulatively, and it was to try to keep myself safe, right? And you can't really keep yourself safe. And all you're doing when you're doing that is denying yourself of the full human, beautiful experience. And so I think to move with heart is to get truly brave and to say to life, say to people, you can break my heart as many times as you want, and I'm going to remain open, and I'm going to remain alive, courageously alive. And that's how I'm, going to stay resilient and stay a part of this beautiful existence because it is beautiful.
So beautiful. And so moving and touching and inspiring and motivating and empowering and just, Aaron Sorkin is a smart man.
He's the best. I still talk to him every day.
I mean, what a journey. Where can everyone find you? Are you writing another book? Like
I am writing another book.
I felt it. Did you say it? You didn't? No.
It's on effective presence.
Ooh.
Because we're forgetting how to connect, you know? Effective presence with an A. And it's literally the science of how you make people feel. We all leave an emotional footprint on the world. And it's shocking how many people don't even consider how they are making people feel when they walk into a room.
Fucking mind-boggling. Yeah. I can't even. Some of the most powerful.
Yeah.
Some of the most.
Yeah.
The ones who are lifted so high on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Guess what? I knocked that fucking pedestal over.
Yeah.
No more.
No
We're
more.
all here.
Yeah.
Same playing field.
Yeah. Show me about your character.
Yeah.
Show me about your
I don't
kindness.
care what you've done, guru.
Yeah.
But
Right.
No.
I want to know like how you treat the people in your life. But then there's the people that aren't malicious. They just are an autopilot.
Clueless.
Yeah. They're just an autopilot. And it's a gigantic missed opportunity. So effective presence is the book. And then, the much bigger endeavor is what I've started to put together with the podcast and the mentorship app and community and whatever that becomes.
Beautiful. Because you never know.
You never know.
And
you just got to do it.
You just got to do it. And you got to go on the ride because look at.
I know. So I'm on Instagram. I'm Molly Bloom. I'm incredibly inactive, but I'm about to get more active.
Yes, I love when you amp up the activity.
Because I have to.
I love watching, and especially when you're on stage. And I mean, not to mention, this was something too. Fortune 100 named you one of the most powerful women. Like, how does that land?
I don't know. You spoke at Harvard.
Isn't it? I mean,
it's crazy.
I struggled in school too. So I'm like, I was like, hey, are you sure? You have the right Melissa.
Yeah. I just got invited to speak at the Oxford debate society, which is 200 years old. And I got the invitation and I'm like, are you sure? I'm like,
yes, they're sure.
But what a great opportunity to stay true to our message and not conform and, it's all magical. It's also hard. I'm telling you right now, I kind of want to start making video, how it's get ready with me, get well with me, and what that looks like.
Wait, that's huge.
Yeah. Because I have to do some work. I've got to find some, I have to get well again.
I want to bring you back when you
I'll come
work
back whenever.
through this. But I'd love to, support and just any way be a never ending guide in your life as you have been for me without even knowing it. So
same. Always.
I can't wait to see what you do next. Keep going for all of us. Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh,
no one has
my
a bigger heart
God.
than you. You're the best person I know.
I love you. Oh my God.
I'm so proud.
Oh my God. Thank you.
Oh my God.